Welcome to In All Things. Here at Loyola University Chicago, we call ourselves a diverse community seeking God in all things. Join us for a series of thought-provoking and engaging conversations with ramblers across many areas of expertise. We hope you can join us in a process of discovery and inspiration as we all expand our perspectives. I'd now like to introduce our host, our Vice President for Mission Integration, Claire Noonan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to In All Things. I am delighted to introduce you to today's guest, who I am actually meeting for the first time myself as well, Dr. Jennifer Armstrong, Clinical Associate Professor of Communication in Arrupe College. Dr. A, as she is known by her students, recently celebrated her 7-year, is that correct? 7-year anniversary
yes.
At Arrupe College. She teaches courses in public speaking and communication and new media and provides academic advising for first-year students. Dr. A believes in empowering students to do their very best in the classroom and in life, and this belief led to the development of her podcast, Xpress Your Best, currently in its 3rd season. Welcome, Dr. A.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. I'm so happy to be here on In All Things.
So welcome to the show again, and I have been listening to your show in preparation for the podcast. I have to say, Dr. A, I am so struck by the way in which you seem to ask on your show of all your guests for them to reflect on the highlights and challenges of their life as college students. And I can almost see their minds turning as you pose those questions, because it's so evident that you're inviting them to really listen to themselves in very particular terms. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you've developed those questions to begin and move your students through those interviews.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think of Xpress Your Best as more than just a podcast. I really see it as a movement of sorts where everyone has the opportunity to express their best selves. We all have a space in which we do that, whether it's by the way that we dress or the things that we say or just how we are. I think the ability to say what it is that's going well, what our strengths are, really invites us to repeat those things. And then those things that may be challenges help us to see where we might need to improve. And sometimes I don't know if we feel that young adults really have a handle on that, but they do. They're able to identify what they may not have done well and to really then look at, well, what is it that I can do better? It's kind of like they're listening even when we think that they aren't.
Yeah. And what it was so resonant for me in this Ignatian way of proceeding, St. Ignatius's Examen, where he asks us every day to think about what are those highlights and challenges, but he puts it in a little different language. But the thing I really appreciate so much about what you draw out of your students is the particulars. You know, you don't, they're not glossing over their experience. They're really delving into that experience. And maybe there's some one or two students that jumps out at you in the way they responded to those questions that really made you understand the power of them.
Yeah. So interestingly, I absolutely have two. One is a young lady that I knew very well. She's one of my extended godchildren. I interviewed her for the show. I invited her on, and I don't always know much about what's going on with these young people. Sometimes they're referred to me. Sometimes I know them through their parents. And I'm intentional about not seeking out students who are, stellar in terms of their grades and what they're doing in life. I just want them to show me their best selves, whatever they might be. So one student, she got on the show and I discovered that she was no longer at a 4-year university. Surprise! I was at her trunk party. Yes. So she was no longer there. But I decided to keep the episode because I know that she represents so many other young people who got to college, experienced some challenges. Maybe they weren't able to get up for classes on time and it caused their grades to go down. Maybe they delved too much into the social life and didn't put enough time into their academic lives. Whatever the case might be. And so she did not stay at this university. She did her best, but she ended up not staying. What she did do is go home and she explored a passion of hers, which is doing nails. And she is fabulous. So she went to school to do nails. She's gotten her licensure. She already has a job. She's got a booth. She's doing well. And so I wanted to keep that episode because I thought, wow, I know that there are so many other students who could relate to something like this, that there are shifts in life, right? And that journey that we're on is just not linear. So I think it's just fun to have a twist every now and again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were able to draw out of her how she found her joy and her gifts.
Absolutely.
In an unexpected way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I had another student. This particular student, I met his first year at Arupe, and I knew that he came to us after having faced some challenges in his environment. But I really learned about him during the podcast. We actually had some similarities. I worked in the area in which he lived at some point in my life, and so we had some things in common. But I really got to understand him a little bit better when we were talking during the podcast about his challenges. And, you know, he knew that he was going to have to spend additional time at Arupe because he wasn't graduating with his class. But one of the things that he told me that stuck with me, his words of wisdom, he said, failure is not the end of your journey, Dr. A. And I know that's probably not the first time that's ever been said, but the fact that he realized that and that it was his own life, right, that he was talking about really resonated with me, that sometimes we do get so caught up in the challenges of life that we can just stop. And so these young people, they have choices. He could have very well stopped where he was, realizing that he wasn't graduating with his class. There were so many things going on in life, but he didn't. He knew that there was something more for him. And so those are the two that really stood out to me.
You know, there was one episode that I listened to in particular. It might even be this same one where the student actually credited you with that insight.
Yeah, that was another student where we had a very difficult conversation. That's actually the first episode of our third season. We had to have a very difficult conversation when he was at Arupe. But I was convinced that although he wasn't going to be able to finish with us, he was going to be okay. And that's what I told him. And he begged me, please don't make me have to go home and tell my parents this. And I said, but you're going to be fine. And yes, he is doing great now. He left our school, but he did continue his education and he's going to be graduating soon. So I am very excited about him.
That's so great. And the piece about challenging folks when they're in that moment of struggle and inviting them to think about a chapter after a failure. You know, there's a piece in that about identifying what it is you need to take the next step. And it seems like you've got just the way of doing that with the students, of helping them to identify what it is that they need to take the step after the failure, either in a new direction or to do better next time. So how do you come to that with them?
Yeah, you know what I think, and I was talking to a group of scholarship recipients about this recently, because I think life is just a series of first steps. And so when we're infants or when we're, very young, taking that first step opens the door to so many other things, right? To our levels of independence. We're starting to walk and run and just all of these other things that are open to us. But our entire lives, if we think about it, they're a series of first steps. But if we never take them, then we never see what's on the other side. And so it makes such a difference. And so even when we get to that point, when the students get to that point where there is a challenge, to take that step beyond says everything. It's just another first step. If we think of it like that, then it doesn't seem as difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tagline, I think I'm getting this right, Dr. A, of your podcast is from your favorite professor, Dr. A, looking forward to sharing words of encouragement to start your day.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of one of they call them the universal apostolic preferences of the Society of Jesus. So the Jesuits, like 4 main things that they're really focusing on this 10-year period that they're in. One of them is to accompany young people into a hope-filled future. And I wonder if you could talk about the relationship as you see it between encouragement and hope for your students, for yourself as a professor.
Wow. I think that, of course, it goes both ways, right? I'm just so amazed that I feel like my job, I have a responsibility to encourage them because of all of what was poured into me. I mean, my journey through college was not always the easiest either. And, I had a situation where I was in college my senior year, and my parents at one point did not have the funds for me to continue. It was on a temporary hold. And so I was waiting, and I thought that they would let me into school, but they didn't. And so I'm sleeping on couches for my friends, and I'm just holding on. And I went to a professor, Mr. Lovett, and I went to him and I said, yeah, this is just what's going on. And I don't know that I had any expectation. But this man who believed in me enough and wanted me to continue on in my education, he wrote a letter to the financial aid department that said that if I was not able to pay, if my parents weren't able to pay within 2 weeks, that the money should be taken out of his paycheck. That is an experience that forever changed my life. And I've always known that I would be an educator. My mother did it, but he just confirmed for me that this is what I'm supposed to do, that I am to pour into others the way that he poured into me, and so many others have poured into me. And so this encouragement of the students is just what I'm here to do. And then I get my hope, right, from them. And then they encourage me too. So it just goes both ways. I cannot imagine myself doing anything else because I receive so much from what the students share and just who they are. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how do you help them find that wellspring of hope and encouragement? I mean, is it in that same way that your professor did to you of just this absolute, I mean, he put his trust in you like right on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm difficult in the classroom, Claire. I'm going to tell you, I'm known to be a challenge in the classroom. But in my office, I give out hugs. I pray for students. I pray with students. We talk about, things that are on their hearts, and I listen. And so I think, that's one of the more important things for me is that they feel heard. That's really a lot of what this podcast is all about. I feel like this generation in particular is not often heard. And if I can create a platform for them to feel like someone is listening to them, then I am happy to do it. So a lot of times they say things that they've never shared with their parents. And I'm so excited when if I know the parent to say, hey, look at this, listen to this. But I think it's already in there, right? They just need the platform, they just need the door opened, that someone cares enough to say, hey, you know what? This is your time. Say what you want to say. And then share what you would say to someone else that's just like you. How would you get them to express their feelings? Or what do you want to say to them that can be a source of encouragement?
Well, and that listening in the office in that unconditional love sort of way, it seems like that really actually validates, maybe in an unexpected way for them, how tough you are in the classroom. Because it's the toughness in the classroom is another way of saying to them, I know you're up to this.
Yes.
I know there is excellence there, and in both spaces, inviting them into that.
Yeah, I hope that that's what they see. I hope that they feel that, because my job is not just about teaching you the content of the classroom. I'm supposed to prepare you for life. And that's what I tell them too. On so many of my episodes, I talk about, being in higher ed it's an evolution. You find it's an evolution of self. You are always learning about yourself. There's something new. Even when I was, my 30s getting a PhD, I felt like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going through this. But it's just an evolution of self every single time. So I do hope that they can see that in the classroom.
Yeah. One of my mentors in higher ed used to say, we don't teach subjects, we teach students.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
It's who is that person in front of you and how are they going to learn?
Yeah.
And that's what you put out.
Yeah, because every single one is different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, teaching to the content is no fun, but to the student, right? That makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about a little another dimension of your life sort of beyond the classroom that came out in one of the podcasts. An episode where you were interviewing some of the Arute students and speaking about the Bridging the Divide conference that you took them to. Can you tell us, for our listeners, what the Bridging the Divide movement conference is all about and what its impact has been for you, for the students, for the wider society?
Yeah, so I love this program. This is through a relationship that we have with the University of Chicago. And I think it's the Institute of Politics. And so we actually started collaborating with them. I think it's been 5-6 years. It may have been a little bit longer than that. So initially, this was a program where the students would meet 3 times with the University of Chicago, Eureka College, and then it was a Arute. And so we would kind of go different places. So we might go to downstate Illinois. They would come visit us, with the goal of making students aware that there is potentially a divide, and a rural-urban divide that exists, and how this impacts some of the issues that we all experience every day. So when we think about things like homelessness or gun violence, and what does that mean? What does that look like in a rural environment versus an urban environment? But what has happened this past year is that University of Chicago, who actually ran the program, they decided that they were going to make it a 3-day conference instead. So it was just a really exciting opportunity. We decided that the students should stay on the campus. So we all went to, we stayed at a hotel right on the University of Chicago campus, and we attended the conference every day. And there were there were so many thought leaders who were in these different arenas that I've mentioned to you. We talk about trauma and, again, homelessness. And when we think about food and all of these thought leaders that talk to the students about, what does it mean? Is there really an urban-rural divide? And what they came to really is that a lot of the across issue, that there are a lot of the same values, right? That there really isn't as much of a divide as one might think. And so we started to talk more about the commonalities that exist among these same issues. And so, we ask students to, we kind of generate interest among students just to see. Of course, we have different groups every year. And so this past year, oh my gosh, these students were phenomenal. They were really great. Again, students they need a platform in which to share their thoughts, their perspectives. And if they don't have it, you never realize what they may not or may know. And so, students who are coming from maybe rural backgrounds or depending on what their background is, it actually influenced a lot of what they thought about some of these issues. And so it was really very interesting, their takeaways and learning that some of them have an interest in politics or in law. And one of our students has even gone over, she's doing an internship at the Trauma Center at the University of Chicago. So it really does, first of all, it helps to build a connection. Exposing our students to, just a wide range of people and diverse issues that they may have had concerns about already. Because you can imagine gun violence, no matter where it is an issue for us all. And so for the students, it just gave them an opportunity to hear from others and to also share, their own perspectives.
Well, and I noticed in that interview that there seemed to be one student at least who kind of carried that rural-urban divide inside of herself. Being an urban student, obviously a Root Bay College student right now, but yet her family coming from an immigrant background where their cousins, their grandmother is in a rural area. And to hold that, to see her hold that, bring that divide together just inside of herself was so absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And I think for her, it was so important to hear from people who were having the experience, right? Like not, again, that idea of having a voice. Because who are we listening to? Yes. Are we talking to people who are unhoused when we're having this discussion? I mean, who are we talking to? And so offering that platform, I think was, again, so important for the students so that they could really share their own thoughts.
Yeah, so people can speak for themselves rather than having someone else speak for them.
Yeah. How often do we have that experience?
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's the other thing I thought was so interesting is that particular divide I don't think it is addressed very frequently in our conversations about polarization or even diversity, the kind of rural-urban divide. So, good on you for bringing that to the forefront,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful for Root Bay for having that connection with the University of Chicago and then allowing me to be a part of that. And so I enjoy, of course, working with the students and helping them with the communication is great. Yeah.
Well, I'm noticing we're already running up on our time, which I can hardly believe it. The time has gone so fast. So as a closing question, I wanted to just share this quotation with you from the late Jesuit Howard Gray, Dr. A, who said in an article called Soul Education, he says, "Simply put, the Ignatian instinct is to help people become fully alive." So as we close our conversation, just would like to ask, are you experiencing fullness of life in any way right now that we didn't already get to talk about that you'd like to share?
Wow. I thought I was the one that would pose these kinds of questions. Oh, I like that. Am I experiencing fullness of self in any space in my life right now? I think absolutely. My mother is on an Alzheimer's journey. And I think whereas it's definitely a shift and one in which, people can obviously see that there's a decline. It has also put me in a space to spend so much time with my mother, a very different type of time. I really appreciate every moment. It is full of laughter. It is full of love. It is full of disappointment sometimes or just acknowledgement of differences. But I think the love supersedes it all. And so for that, I am very grateful.
Well, what a profound place to end the note of gratitude and fullness of life that also includes the challenges and the changes and the heartbreak of our lives. I'm in that journey with my mom too, Dr. A. So,
wow.
you know, when you bring your own story forward, there's it invites a connection. So I appreciate the way that you've done that in this conversation today, but also obviously in your teaching and in your family and in your beautiful podcast.
Thank you, Claire. I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to chat today.
Me too. What a joy to have spoken with you today, Dr. A. I want to remind our listeners that you can find Dr. A's podcast, Xpress Your Best, and that's Express with no E, on Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can find further episodes of this podcast in All Things on the Loyola University Chicago website just by searching for Ignatian Heritage Month. I want to thank my whole team at In All Things, Clemisha Richards, Kayla Cooney, Lauren Schwer, and Julia Price. Until next time, everyone, keep seeking God in all things.